Chosen one, listen closely. Everything you thought was impossible, everything they said was a coincidence, has been quietly aligning in your favor. The proof is here, and now they can't stop what's coming. The world is about to realize you were right all along. Every doubt, every struggle, every moment you felt unseen, it was leading to this exact moment. And what's about to unfold will change everything. For you and for everyone watching. They've been watching, they've been skeptical, but now they can't ignore it. You're moving forward while the rest are still trying to catch up. And once you see what's coming next, you'll understand why momentum like this can't be stopped. Before we dive in, I want to know, what's the one moment you realized you were right when no one else believed you? Comment it below. I'll be reading every single one because your story is part of what's happening next. For a long time, they thought you were imagining things. They told you to be practical. They told you to be realistic. They told you to calm down, slow down, and stop believing in something bigger. They said it with confidence, like certainty lived in their voices, and doubt belonged only to you. And for a while, it almost worked. You questioned yourself in quiet moments. You replayed conversations in your mind, wondering if you had gone too far, if you had trusted your instincts too much. You wondered if your inner voice was wisdom, or just emotion wearing a convincing mask. That uncertainty was heavy, not dramatic, not loud, just persistent. It followed you late at night, during ordinary days when nothing obvious was happening yet. You kept moving forward, but part of you carried the weight of not being understood. Then something changed, not suddenly, not loudly. Reality began behaving differently around you. You didn't announce it. You didn't point it out. You didn't need to. Events started lining up in ways that were too exact to ignore. Situations you warned about unfolded exactly as you had sensed they would. People you felt uneasy about revealed their true intentions without you saying a word. Paths you deliberately avoided collapsed after you walked away, confirming that your hesitation had been protection, not fear. That's when the noise stopped. Mockery didn't turn into applause. It turned into silence. The kind of silence that only appears when people are forced to reconsider what they thought they knew. They didn't say, "You were right." Most people never do. But their eyes did. Their behavior did. They began watching you more closely, not casually, but carefully. They listened when you spoke, not to respond, but to understand. They noticed how calm you remained when everything around them felt unstable. While others rushed, panicked, or reacted emotionally, you stayed grounded, not because you had all the answers, but because you trusted the direction. Deep down, they felt it. You weren't guessing. You weren't lucky. You weren't dramatic. You were seeing ahead. That realization unsettled them more than being wrong ever could. Because when someone turns out to be right without trying to prove it, it forces a deeper question. What else have they been sensing all along? Fear entered the room quietly. Not panic, awareness. The awareness that something bigger had been moving beneath the surface for a long time. Something invisible, patient, precise, and you had been tuned into it while others dismissed it. They started connecting dots backward, remembering moments they brushed off, conversations they didn't take seriously, warnings they ignored. Suddenly, your calm wasn't strange anymore. It was strategic. Your patience wasn't weakness. It was foresight. And once that realization settled in, there was no way to unsee it. Because when someone like you turns out to be right, it doesn't just change opinions. It changes power dynamics. It shifts who people trust. It alters who they listen to when things begin to fall apart. And now, whether they admit it or not, they know this truth. You were never crazy. You were never lost. You were never behind. You were early. And now that the proof has appeared, it's already too late to stop what's coming. You might wonder why the truth didn't come sooner. Why confirmation waited until after the hardest moments. Why you had to endure doubt instead of recognition, loneliness instead of support, and uncertainty instead of clarity. There were times it felt unfair, as if life was intentionally withholding answers while demanding endurance. But here is the reason most people never understand. If the proof had arrived earlier, you wouldn't have been strong enough to carry what's coming now. What felt like isolation was not punishment. It was training. Being alone forced you to listen inward instead of relying on external reassurance. You learned how to stand steady without applause. You learned how to trust yourself even when no one else did. What felt like confusion was refinement. Every unanswered question stripped away false beliefs. Every setback removed expectations that would have limited you later. You weren't being broken down. You were being sharpened. What felt like endless patience was protection. Had things moved faster, you would have stepped into spaces you weren't yet prepared to navigate. You would have attracted attention before your foundation was solid. The delay kept you safe from responsibilities that would have crushed an earlier version of you. You weren't being delayed. You were being conditioned. Because what's unfolding now isn't small. It isn't temporary. It isn't something you can pick up and put down when it gets uncomfortable. It requires stability, restraint, and emotional maturity, the kind that only develops through pressure. The universe doesn't confirm chosen ones with compliments. It doesn't reward them with early applause or easy victories. It confirms them with precision, exact timing that can't be rushed, exact outcomes that can't be forced, exact reversals that leave no room for coincidence. That's why the proof appeared when it did, not when you wanted it, when it could no longer be denied. People started noticing patterns around you, not dramatic miracles, but consistent alignment. Opportunities appeared without effort, as if they had been waiting for you to arrive. Situations that once felt blocked suddenly opened with no explanation. Roadblocks dissolved right as you stepped forward, as though resistance had run out of purpose. And the most unsettling part for those watching, you stopped chasing. You stopped forcing outcomes to prove your worth. You stopped explaining your vision to people who couldn't see it. You stopped trying to be understood. That's when things started coming to you. This shift is what unsettles those who doubted you the most, because they expected you to either fail or fight harder. They didn't expect you to become still. They didn't expect you to trust timing. They didn't expect momentum to build quietly around you. When a chosen one no longer needs validation, movement becomes inevitable. Energy stops leaking into explanations and starts flowing into direction. And now they're realizing the truth. You were never early, you were never late. You were always on time, exactly when you needed to be. Something has changed, not just in your life, but in the atmosphere around you. It's subtle, almost invisible, yet impossible to ignore. People feel it the moment you enter a room. Conversations slow down, voices soften, attention shifts without anyone intending it to. There's a brief pause, like something unspoken has arrived. Not because you demand attention, not because you dominate space, but because your presence carries certainty. You're not loud, you're not aggressive, you're not trying to be impressive. You're grounded, and that grounded energy unsettles people more than confidence ever could. Confidence can be performed, certainty cannot. They sense that you know something they don't, not in an arrogant way, but in a calm, measured way that suggests perspective. You see through surface-level noise. You don't get pulled into emotional chaos. You don't react impulsively. Where others rush to respond, you pause. Where others speak quickly, you choose your words carefully. Where others feel pressured to decide, you wait. That restraint is what changes everything. People begin to realize that you're operating from a different level. You're no longer responding to circumstances, you're anticipating them. You're no longer reacting emotionally, you're observing strategically. That's when it becomes clear that you've already crossed a line they haven't even reached yet. And here's what truly unsettles them. You're not celebrating. Most people reveal their momentum too early. They announce progress. They broadcast confidence. They chase recognition the moment things start working. But you don't. You're quiet, reserved, focused. You're not announcing victory. You're not explaining your plans. You're not bragging. You're waiting. Not because you're unsure, but because you understand something most people learn too late. The biggest outcomes don't arrive with noise. They don't require explanation. They don't need defense. They arrive with finality. When something is truly locked in, it doesn't need validation. It simply shows up, undeniable and complete. You understand that speaking too early dilutes power. Moving quietly preserves it. That's why people feel uneasy around you. They can sense that something is forming, but they can't identify it. They feel momentum without evidence, direction without announcements, strength without aggression. The proof they discovered about you wasn't just about the past. It wasn't only about how often you were right or how accurately you sensed what others missed. It was about what's coming next. They can feel it building beneath the surface. The calm before a shift, the pause before movement, the silence before results. You're not waiting for permission. You're not seeking approval. You're allowing timing to complete its work. And that's why the room feels different when you walk in. Because deep down, people know they're in the presence of someone who has already decided where they're going. And nothing unsettles uncertainty more than certainty that doesn't need to speak. There was a time when interference was possible, a time when distractions could pull you off course, when doubt could slow your steps, when the opinions of others had the power to influence your decisions. Back then, Hesitation had weight. Outside voices mattered. Confusion could still reach you. That time is over. You have crossed into a phase where momentum replaces motivation. You no longer wake up needing to be pushed. You don't rely on excitement to move forward. You don't need reminders of who you are or where you're going. Movement happens naturally now because direction is already decided. You don't need encouragement. You don't need reassurance. You don't need permission. Your alignment is locked in. This is what makes the current stage so different from everything that came before. Even delays no longer frustrate you. You recognize them as part of the process. Even resistance doesn't weaken you anymore. It sharpens your focus and strengthens your position. What once felt like opposition now feels like confirmation that you're moving in the right direction. This is what most people don't understand. Once a chosen one reaches internal clarity, external obstacles lose their power. The world can still test you, but it can't redirect you. Circumstances may challenge you, but they no longer control your reactions. You're no longer making decisions from fear or urgency. You're moving from certainty. At this point, the universe stops negotiating. There's no more back and forth. No more hesitation in timing. Timelines collapse into inevitability. What was once a possibility becomes a trajectory. That's why things are accelerating. Doors you weren't even knocking on begin to open. Opportunities show up without effort. Situations that once required struggle resolve themselves. You notice that what used to feel heavy now feels manageable, even light. Old fears don't convince you anymore. They still appear, but they don't have authority. You recognize them as echoes of an earlier version of yourself, not instructions for the future. Doubt no longer stops you. It passes through and fades. And this is why the people who once doubted you now feel powerless. They can see the change, even if they can't explain it. They sense the momentum. They recognize that something has shifted beyond influence. Advice no longer alters your direction. Opinions no longer shake your confidence. Attempts to distract you fail before they begin. No matter what they do, they cannot slow this down. Not because you're pushing harder than before, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you're no longer fighting at all. You're moving with the current instead of against it. You're aligned with a path that no longer requires resistance. Progress feels quieter, smoother, and more certain than anything you've experienced before. What's coming isn't fragile. It doesn't depend on perfect conditions. It doesn't need constant effort to survive. It's already in motion. And once momentum reaches this stage, nothing can block it. Here's the truth few people are ready to accept, and even fewer are willing to live by. You didn't become chosen. You remembered who you were. Nothing was added to you. Nothing was granted at random. What's happening now isn't a reward. It's a return. A return to a deeper knowing that existed long before doubt, before conditioning, before the world told you who to be. Every challenge you faced was designed to wake you up, not to punish you, not to delay you, but to strip away illusions. Each obstacle forced you to see more clearly. Each setback demanded awareness. You weren't being tested to see if you were worthy. You were being tested to see if you would remember. Every delay sharpened your discernment. Waiting taught you patience, but more importantly, it taught you timing. You learned when to move and when to stay still. You learned that rushing weakens clarity, and restraint strengthens power. Every moment of doubt removed what couldn't follow you forward. False identities fell away. Attachments loosened. Relationships that depended on your confusion faded. What remained was essential. What remained was real. And now, the final phase begins. This is the phase where effort feels lighter, not because things are easy, but because you're no longer resisting who you are. You're no longer splitting your energy between doubt and desire. Decisions feel clearer because they come from alignment instead of fear. Outcomes feel inevitable because you've stopped fighting the process. This is why they can't stop what's coming. Because it's no longer about circumstances. It's no longer about timing battles or external approval. It's about alignment. And alignment always wins. You don't need to explain yourself anymore. Explanations belong to uncertainty, and you've moved beyond that. You don't need to prove your vision, because truth doesn't require defense. The proof already spoke through events, through outcomes, through the quiet accuracy of your path. What's left now is movement. Forward, uninterrupted, unstoppable. You may notice that things feel different, quieter, more focused, less chaotic. That's because distraction has lost its grip. You're no longer pulled in 100 directions. Your energy moves in one direction now, and that makes all the difference. If this message found you, understand this clearly. You're not imagining the shift. You're not overthinking the signs. You are recognizing alignment in real time. You're standing at the edge of a new chapter, one that confirms everything you quietly believed during the hardest moments, when there was no evidence, no support, and no reassurance. Those beliefs weren't fantasies. They were memories surfacing before their time. And once you step fully into this chapter, there is no reversal. Nothing and no one can turn it back. Because destiny isn't something you chase. It's something you finally stop running from. As we reach the end, it's time to let this sink in. You've seen the proof. You've felt the shift. You've watched how momentum builds quietly around those who are aligned, those who are no longer trying to force outcomes, those who have remembered who they truly are. And now, it's your turn to step fully into this reality. Understand this clearly. What's happening in your life right now is not random. It's not coincidence. It's the culmination of everything you've experienced, everything you've endured, and everything you've patiently waited for. Every challenge you faced, every moment of doubt, every obstacle that tried to slow you down. It was all preparing you for this. Not later, not someday. Now. You are not imagining the shift. You are not overthinking signs. The universe has already moved in your favor. The people who doubted you, the circumstances that seemed unfair, the moments when it felt like nothing was happening, they all served a purpose. They refined you. They sharpened your awareness. They ensured that when this moment arrived, you would be ready, steady, and unstoppable. And here's the most important part. Momentum like this doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for validation. It moves silently, powerfully, and inevitably. You don't need to fight harder. You don't need to prove yourself. You only need to align with it, trust it, and step forward. Every decision you make from this point on will carry weight because it comes from clarity, not doubt. It comes from understanding, not fear. So, what's next? It's simple, but it's profound. Keep moving forward. Don't rush, don't hesitate, and don't second-guess your instincts. Every step you take now will compound into outcomes that will surprise even those who thought they understood you. They'll watch, astonished, as your life unfolds exactly as it should. And when that happens, they will realize, too late, that you were never wrong. You were never behind. You were always ahead. Remember, alignment always wins. Timing always matters. And destiny always finds its way to those who stay true to themselves. Your path is no longer about proving anything to anyone. It's about stepping fully into your own power and allowing what's meant for you to arrive without resistance. If you've felt this energy, if you've recognized the signs, if you've seen how everything has been aligning, then take it seriously. The proof is in front of you. The momentum is real. And now, all that remains is movement. Forward, uninterrupted, unstoppable. You are ready. You are aligned. And nothing, no one, no circumstance can turn back what has already begun.